The lie begins. Rain fell in silver sheets across the small frontier town, turning the streets to mud and washing lantern light into trembling pools of gold. Clara Whitmore stood beneath the station awning with one leather case at her feet, and the last of her pride slipping quietly away. An hour earlier, she had believed she was leaving for a new life. Victor Hale had promised marriage, comfort, and a future far from the gossip of town. He had spoken with polished confidence, pressing kisses to her gloved hand while servants loaded trunks for their journey. Clara had ignored the coldness in his eyes because she wanted desperately to believe warmth could be learned. And she opened the wrong door. Inside the private waiting room, Victor was laughing with a woman draped in silk and perfume. His hand rested possessively on the stranger's waist. He did not even startle when Clara entered. Instead, he sighed as though interrupted by a minor inconvenience. "You were not meant to see this," he said. Clara remembered the stillness that followed. No apology, no shame, only annoyance. "And if I had not?" she asked. He straightened his coat. "Then tomorrow you would still be my fiancé." The woman laughed softly. Clara had never heard a crueler sound. Now Victor was gone, taking the carriage, the servants, and the future he had sold her. He left her standing in the storm with a single case and the knowledge that half the town would know by morning. She bent to lift the bag, but exhaustion made her hands tremble. "Allow me." The voice was low, steady, and unfamiliar. She turned to see a tall man in a dark coat dampened by rain. His features were stern, carved by weather and silence. His hair was tied back at the nape, and his eyes, sharp, unreadable, rested on her luggage rather than her face. "I can manage," Clara said automatically. "I believe you can," he replied. "Yet you should not have to." Before she could protest, he lifted the case as though it weighed nothing. She recognized him then. Elias Grayhawk. People spoke his name in lowered voices. Some with respect, more with prejudice. An Apache rancher whose land bordered the valley. A man who traded horses, kept to himself, and refused to bow to men wealthier than he was. Victor despised him openly. As if summoned by the thought, laughter spilled from across the street. Victor stood beneath the hotel veranda with several businessmen, dry beneath the roof, watching the station. "Well," Victor called, "Miss Whitmore appears resourceful after all." The men chuckled. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks hotter than anger. Elias did not look toward them. "Where are you staying?" he asked. She swallowed. "I had expected to travel tonight." "That was not my question. I have nowhere." For the first time, his gaze met hers. There was no pity in it, only recognition of a fact both unpleasant and plain. Victor crossed the street, boots splashing mud. "Careful, Grayhawk. The lady is accustomed to finer company." Elias remained motionless. Victor smirked, though perhaps abandoned women lower their standards. Clara stiffened, but before she could speak, Elias set her case beside him and said with calm clarity that carried through the rain, "My wife's standards are her own concern." Silence struck the street. Victor blinked. "You're what?" "My wife," Elias repeated. He extended his arm to Clara without looking at her. "We are returning home." Every eye turned to her. Clara's pulse thundered. The lie hung between them, outrageous and impossible. Yet Victor's smug amusement had vanished, replaced by confusion edged with fury. The gathered men suddenly looked uncertain, deprived of their entertainment. Clara understood at once what Elias had given her, a shield. If she denied him, she would stand exposed and ruined before them all. If she accepted, she stepped into danger of another kind. She slipped her hand through Elias's arm. "Yes," she said evenly. "My husband dislikes waiting." Victor's face hardened. "This is absurd." "Then you should recover quickly," Clara answered. A few of the men looked away to hide smiles. Elias picked up her case and guided her toward the waiting wagon at the curb. Only when they were seated and rolling into the dark did Clara release the breath trapped in her chest. The town lights faded behind them. "You might have warned me," she said. "You would have refused." "Possibly. Yes." Rain drummed on the wagon roof. She studied his profile in the dimness. "Why help me?" He took his time answering. "Because men like Hale mistake cruelty for strength," he said. "And because tonight you needed a door opened." She looked down at her gloved hands. Tomorrow they will know the truth. Not if you leave before dawn. And if I do not wish to. He glanced at her then, something softer moving beneath the hard lines of his face. Then stay until you decide where to go. The wagon climbed a ridge, and below them spread a ranch house lit warmly against the storm, steady as a lantern in open country. When they stopped, Elias climbed down first and offered his hand. Clara hesitated only a moment before taking it. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and bread. Firelight flickered across sturdy walls and woven blankets. It felt honest in a way Victor's polished rooms never had. Elias set down her case near the hearth. You may have the east room, he said. No one will disturb you. And you? I keep late hours. She studied him carefully. Do you often marry strangers in the rain, Mr. Grayhawk? The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. Only when necessary. Then his expression sobered. Tomorrow, Clara, you may leave with no questions asked. He paused. Unless you need a real place to stay. She stared at the fire long after he walked away, wondering why that simple offer felt more dangerous than the lie that brought her there. A house built on pretending. Clara woke to sunlight laid across the quilt like warm silk. For a moment she did not know where she was. The room held plain wooden walls, a braided rug, and a narrow shelf lined with books worn by many hands. Nothing glittered. Nothing was arranged to impress. Yet the quiet felt richer than any chamber Victor Hale had ever offered her. Then memory returned. The rain, the lie, the man who had called her his wife before a crowd. She dressed quickly and stepped into the hall. Voices drifted from the kitchen. One belonged to Elias, low and measured. The other was sharper, older, and amused. So this miracle happened in the rain? The woman asked. It happened at the station. That is not what I asked. Clara paused, but the floorboard beneath her creaked. Come in, the woman called. If you are to be family, skulking is a poor beginning. Clara entered to find a silver-haired woman kneading dough with formidable hands. Her eyes, bright as polished flint, swept Clara from head to toe and missed nothing. This is my aunt, Martha Grayhawk, Elias said. Martha wiped flour from her fingers and extended one hand. I know who she is. Town gossip, rides faster than horses. She squeezed Clara's hand warmly. Sit. You look hungry and stubborn. Clara almost laughed. I'm certainly one of those. Good. Stubborn people survive. Breakfast was simple, bread, eggs, and preserves, but Clara ate with unexpected appetite. Elias spoke little. He seemed most comfortable in silence. Yet the silence around him did not feel empty. It felt chosen. Martha watched them both with transparent curiosity. When did you marry? She asked. Recently, Elias answered. How recent? Last night, Martha said dryly before either could reply. Clara nearly choked on tea. Elias set down his cup with admirable calm. Martha clicked her tongue. Do not fear, girl. I am old, not blind. Whatever bargain brought you here is yours to keep. But if you plan to fool the town, begin by looking at each other like people who share a bed rather than a courtroom. Clara colored. Elias stared into his cup. After breakfast, Martha sent Elias to mend a broken gate and handed Clara an apron. I have never worn one of these, Clara admitted. Then today is rich with education. The hours that followed passed in honest labor. Clara shelled beans, swept floors, and burned one pan so badly that Martha laughed until tears formed in the corners of her eyes. No servant rushed to rescue mistakes. No one mocked her ignorance. Each task completed seemed to loosen some invisible knot inside her. By noon, Elias returned carrying tools over one shoulder. Dust streaked his sleeves. Clara had never seen a man made more handsome by work. He stopped at the sight of her in the apron. You survived, he said. Barely. Your aunt governs like an emperor. She governs better. Martha threw a towel at him. Later, Clara walked with Elias to the paddock, where several horses grazed beneath cottonwoods. He moved among them with calm authority, touching necks, checking hooves, speaking softly. Even the restless mare stilled under his hand. They trust you, Clara said. I earn it. The answer held more weight than the words themselves. She leaned on the fence. Did you mean what you said last night? That I may stay until I decide. Yes. Why? He kept his gaze on the mare. Because being cornered makes poor decisions seem reasonable. She thought of Victor. You speak from experience. At that, Elias's jaw tightened. I was engaged once, he said. She preferred a banker with softer hands. She left with him and with money saved for my mother's treatment. Clara turned sharply. I am sorry. He shrugged, but bitterness lived beneath the motion. Pity wastes time. It was not pity. He looked at her then, measuring whether to believe. My turn, he said. Why stay with Hale so long? The truth rose easier than expected. Because he praised me in public and punished me in private. Because he made dependence sound like devotion. Because I was ashamed to admit I had chosen badly. Elias's expression darkened, though not at her. No one chooses deceit, he said. The simple certainty in his voice nearly undid her. That afternoon, 2 neighboring women arrived, carrying jars of peaches and enough curiosity to feed a regiment. Clara braced herself, but Martha welcomed them inside as if entertaining spies were a daily pleasure. The women asked how long Clara and Elias had been wed, whether town life suited ranch life, whether Elias was romantic. He proposed during a thunderstorm, Martha said solemnly. Clara coughed to hide a laugh. Elias, entering with firewood, caught the tail of the conversation and gave Clara a look that promised future revenge. She answered the women with graceful half-truths, and to her surprise, Elias played his part well. He stood behind her chair once, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. The touch was brief, innocent, and entirely too noticeable. When the women finally left, Clara exhaled. You are better at deception than I expected, she said. I dislike repeating myself, Elias replied. Then why continue this charade? He set the wood beside the hearth. Because Hale will not let go quickly. Because town judgment is crueler to women than men. Because until you decide your next step, the lie protects you. She had no answer to that. Toward evening, Martha insisted they attend the harvest festival in town the next day. We cannot hide forever, she declared, and married people are expected to suffer public celebrations together. Night fell soft and blue across the ranch. Clara stood on the porch watching the fields darken into shadow. Elias joined her, keeping a respectful distance. You may still leave tomorrow, he said. And if I do not, then we continue pretending. She studied the horizon. Pretending should feel simpler than this. Does it? No. He said nothing, but the silence between them had changed. From far down the road came the faint thunder of a horse ridden hard toward the ranch. Elias straightened before the rider emerged from darkness. Even at a distance, Clara recognized Victor Hale's posture, confident, angry, and certain he still belonged wherever he chose to go. The price of choosing. Victor Hale dismounted before the porch steps as though arriving at property he already owned. Dust clung to his boots, but nothing could dull the polished arrogance of the man. He removed his gloves slowly, giving himself the stage he believed every room deserved. Clara, he said, as if speaking to a disobedient child, get your things. Elias did not move from her side. You have ridden a long way to be disappointed. Victor's smile thinned. I did not address you. You rarely address anyone, Elias replied. You announce. Clara might once have feared the clash between them. Tonight, she felt only fatigue. I'm not returning with you, she said. Victor turned to her, confident contempt replacing charm. You are confused. Yesterday was unfortunate, but private matters between men and women need not become spectacle. You made it a spectacle at the station. You embarrassed yourself there, he said coolly. I am here to repair what can still be repaired. Martha appeared in the doorway, carrying a broom like a weapon chosen for convenience. If repair is your trade, she said, begin with your manners. Victor ignored her. Clara, come now. This ranch farce has amused the town enough. Elias stepped down one stair. Leave. Victor's eyes narrowed. Or what? Where you discover how little I value threats. The two men held each other's gaze. Clara saw the difference between them with startling clarity. Victor sought victory. Elias sought an end. I will speak with her alone, Victor said. No, Clara answered before Elias could. Victor blinked. He was unaccustomed to hearing refusal spoken plainly. You owe me at least a conversation. I owe you nothing. The words shocked even her. Yet once spoken they felt true. Victor's face hardened. Then I shall speak plainly in return. If you remain here, every decent household in town will close its doors to you. They will call you what women are always called when men grow bored. Martha descended the steps, broom in hand. And if you remain 1 minute longer, I will call you concussed. Victor glared, then forced a smile that fooled no one. Very well. Think on it overnight. He looked at Clara. You know, comfort with me. Here you have mud, gossip, and a man who pities damaged things. He mounted and rode away. Clara stood rigid until the hoofbeats faded. I should have answered sooner, Elias said quietly. You answered enough. Yet Victor's words had lodged like thorns. Comfort, security, reputation. She had been trained to measure life in those currencies. The next morning town carried Victor's version of events faster than wind. By noon, a merchant who had once bowed to Clara barely nodded. At the feed store, 2 women whispered, loud enough to be heard. At the well, conversation ceased when she approached. She had known gossip before. This was different. It had purpose. Elias saw each slight and grew colder with everyone. He said little, but his silence now had edges. When they returned to the ranch, Clara found him splitting wood with punishing force. You need not fight the town from me, she said. I am not fighting the town. The axe struck hard enough to bury itself. I am deciding whether to tolerate it. She stepped closer. And if I leave, it ends. You pull the axe free. If you leave because you choose to, that is one matter. And if I leave because staying harms you. At last he looked at her. Then you learn nothing here. The rebuke stung because it was deserved. That evening Victor sent flowers. Martha fed them to the goats. The next day he came in person to the harvest festival, where lanterns swung above crowded stalls and fiddles scraped cheerful music no one truly felt. Clara attended because hiding would look like surrender. Elias walked beside her, hat low, watchful. Everywhere eyes followed them. Victor intercepted them near the cider tables. Clara, he said warmly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Thank heaven. I feared you had been isolated against your will. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elias moved forward, but Clara caught his sleeve. No, she whispered. This is mine. Victor offered his arm. Come, end this nonsense gracefully. She faced him fully. Grace was never the difficulty, Victor. Honesty was. His smile faltered. You promised marriage while keeping mistresses, she continued. You called betrayal private because it benefited you. You call me ruined because I refused to be lied to quietly. People had stopped pretending not to listen. Victor lowered his voice. Careful. For whose sake? For your inheritance, he snapped. Our engagement contract gives me claim once the banns are filed. Break publicly with me, and I contest every penny your father left. The threat was clever, legal, and vicious. A tremor of fear passed through her. Victor saw it and smiled again. Then Elias spoke, not to Victor, but to the crowd. Any man who needs paper to trap a woman confesses his own worth. A few men laughed despite themselves. Victor flushed. You savage. He never finished. Clara's voice cut cleaner than a blade. I was pretending to be his wife, she said, each word carrying through the square. But I was never truly yours. Silence fell, so suddenly the fiddler bow squeaked to a stop. Victor's face drained of color, then flooded red. You will regret this. Perhaps, Clara said, but the regret will be mine, not assigned by you. He turned sharply and strode away through the crowd, shoving shoulders aside. The music resumed uncertainly. Conversation burst like rain after drought. Clara's knees weakened once the danger had passed. Elias steadied her with one hand at her elbow. You should have let me break his nose, he murmured. Despite everything, she laughed. Then Martha approached, less amused than either of them. He will not leave beaten only in pride, she said. If he spoke truth about that contract, he means to strike next with the law. Clara's laughter died. Elias's hand remained at her arm, steady and warm. Then he said, eyes fixed on the road Victor had taken, we strike first, when pretending ended. Victor Hale did not know how to lose quietly. By dawn, printed notices hung on shop doors, fence posts, and the church gate. Each declared that Clara Whitmore had broken a lawful engagement after formal intentions had been announced, and that Victor would seek damages from her inheritance for humiliation, wasted expense, and breach of promise. He had taken greed, wrapped it in respectable language, and nailed it to the town. Clara read one notice outside the mercantile and felt the blood drain from her face. Her father's inheritance was modest, but it was all she possessed that had not been touched by Victor's manipulation. If he tied it in court for years, she would be left with nothing. He cannot truly win, Martha said beside her. He may not need to, Clara answered. Some men only need to ruin. Elias pulled the notice down and folded it once in his hand. Then we end this quickly. Without another word, he saddled his horse and rode out. Clara spent the day in restless silence. She tried sewing with Martha, then reading, then helping in the kitchen, but worry spoiled every effort. Elias had said only that he was gathering truth. Truth, she had learned, was often slow and badly dressed compared to lies. At sunset, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. Elias returned with 2 wagons behind him. From a first stepped a seamstress Clara knew from town. Behind her came a widow who ran the boarding house, then a young clerk from Victor's office. Their faces carried different shades of anger and shame. From a second wagon climbed the bank manager with ledgers tucked beneath his arm. Clara stared. "What is this?" "Your answer," Elias said. They gathered in the parlor while lamps were lit. One by one, the women spoke. Victor had promised marriage to the seamstress while courting Clara. He borrowed money from the widow and never repaid it. He wrote intimate letters to the clerk while publicly praising Clara's virtue. He had also used Clara's expected inheritance to secure private debts. The clerk placed a stack of letters on the table with trembling hands. "I believed him," she whispered. "So did I," Clara said softly. The bank manager opened his ledgers. "Mr. Hale's finances are unsound. If these claims become known, creditors will act at once." Martha's expression sharpened with satisfaction. Then tomorrow should be lively. The town office overflowed the next morning. Victor arrived in tailored confidence, smiling as if he already owned the outcome. When he saw the crowded room and the women seated behind Clara, the smile thinned. The magistrate called for order. Victor spoke first. He described himself as a wronged gentleman whose fiancée had been lured away by scandal and manipulation. He spoke elegantly, using words like duty and honor, so often they lost all meaning. Then Elias stepped forward and placed the letters, sworn statements, and bank records on the desk. The magistrate read in growing silence. The seamstress testified first, voice shaking but clear. The widow followed with icy precision. The clerk cried halfway through her statement, then finished stronger than she began. The bank manager explained Victor's debts and his use of Clara's name. By the end, the room looked at Victor as if seeing him for the first time. The magistrate removed his spectacles. "Mr. Hale, your petition is dismissed. You sought compensation under false pretenses while concealing fraud and repeated deception. Any further claim from you will be viewed unfavorably." Whispers burst across the room. Victor turned to Clara, stripped now of polish. "You think you have won?" "No," she replied. "I think I am free." He glared at Elias. "You planned this." "I listened," Elias said. "Others finally did too." Victor left without another word, though rage followed him like smoke. Outside, townspeople suddenly remembered how warmly they once regarded Clara. She accepted their greetings with calm distance. Approval that changed with the wind was not worth collecting. Back at the ranch, evenings settled quietly over the fields. For the first time in weeks, no threat stood at the door. Clara packed her case. Martha leaned against the frame. "Leaving? I should." "Because you wish to?" Clara hesitated. "Because I came here as trouble." "You came here as truth," Martha said, and walked away. Clara carried her bag to the porch. Elias stood by the gate, repairing a hinge that did not need repair. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said. He nodded once, eyes on the latch. "If that is your choice." Something in his restraint angered her more than pleading would have. "Is silence all you have for me?" He set down the tools and crossed the yard. "No," he said quietly, but silence was safer. He stopped before her. "When I saw you at the station, I helped because no one else would. I expected gratitude, discomfort, and departure." His voice lowered. "Instead, I found myself waiting for your footsteps each morning." Clara's throat tightened. "I called you my wife as a lie," he said. "Then every day after, I wished it had been true." She set down the case. "I stopped pretending before you did." For the first time, uncertainty touched his face. "Then stay. Not from need. Not from fear. Stay because you choose me." Clara stepped forward and took his hands. "I do." Martha's voice drifted from the doorway. "Good. I dislike wasted drama." They laughed together beneath the darkening sky. 3 weeks later, beneath a sunset painted gold and crimson, they married without spectacle or pretense. No vows were spoken for the town, no promises made for advantage. Only honest words between two people who had begun with a lie and ended with the truth. And if the town still talked, neither of them cared enough to listen.